Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Bella from Bella's Makeover. If you are new here, you're welcome. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share with your friends and family. So today I'll be teaching you how I created this look on my sister. So first off, I used my V-Beauty sweat block and I just went over the T-zones area. That's the place that is mostly sweaty and oily, so I used it there with a cotton wool. Then I went over with my Cetaphil moisturizer, and before applying the moisturizer you have to make sure that the face is dry. So that's what I was checking here, and endeavor to apply a lot of, okay, maybe not a lot, but like more than the other places on your face, more moisturizer under the eyes, because a lot of products will go under the eyes and you don't want it to break out. So you apply your moisturizer under the eyes and then all over the face, and you make sure you apply it properly. You can use your hand, but I prefer to use a brush when applying the moisturizer on the face. So I'm just going over all the places that I applied the sweat block and also on the places that I did apply the sweat block. So now I'm just applying the classic primer. It's a mattifying primer, so I'm just applying it on the forehead, the T-zones actually. The forehead, the nose, under the chin, and the sides. And I'm using my hand for this because I want it to get into the skin very well. If you watched most of my videos, you know I always encourage you to blend properly. So make sure your primer gets into the face very well. So now the next step is my foundation, and I always use my setting spray when blending my foundation. It helps the foundation blend properly actually. So I went over with the foundation on the face and then I sprayed the face. Just 2 puffs is okay, even 1 can do the trick. Then you use your beauty blender and you dab on it. Endeavor not to drag the beauty blender, because when you drag, your foundation will not sit on the face well. You would start to have all these breaking lines on the face, and that's not what we want. So I'm just blending and making sure that my foundation matches the face. And as you can see, it does match the face. So you blend, don't be in a hurry. Blend and make sure that you are happy with what you're doing. So I'm doing the same thing on the other side of the face. Foundation first, then I go over with the setting spray, the Kiss Beauty setting spray, and then I blend. You blend and blend and blend until you're satisfied with how the face looks before you move. And your foundation has to match the neck of your clients or yourself or whoever you're making up. Your foundation has to match. So now I'm contouring the face. So I'm using a darker shade of foundation on the cheekbone. So I'm not using the shade that I'm using here is like a shade darker than her, just 1 shade, because she's light and I do not want to use like a really dark shade that would just mess up the whole thing. So you go over on the forehead also, and as you can see I'm also dabbing, I'm not dragging it because I've already applied foundation on the face, and if I drag I'm just going to mess up the whole routine. So I'm just dabbing it. You dab and dab and dab until you're satisfied. So now I'm going over with my TM Essential blush, that's in Cheek Glaze, and I'm applying it on her cheek. And I love this cheek glaze because it pops out the cheekbone properly. Like, it gives what it's supposed to give actually. It does. It just gives this shiny look that I love. So that's why. So now to highlight the face, I'm using my LA Girl Pro concealer to properly define the face. So you go over with a lighter shade first, close to the tear dot. Then I applied another shade that is her concealer shade after the lighter shade. So now I'm blending. I usually start blending from under the chin first, then the nose, then the forehead, before under the eyes. And make sure that when you're blending, you do not drag. I've been emphasizing on this: do not drag. Just dab on it lightly and it will do the trick. And when doing the under eyes, you can tell, for proper blending, you can tell your client to look up. It would ease the stress. So you keep blending and blending until you're satisfied with how the face looks before you move to the next stage. As you can see, the face is already setting, and you can see how that cheek glaze is popping. It's actually popping. So now I'm doing the same thing I did on the first side of the face to the second side. You blend, and when blending, you start from like the bottom shade first before you get to the first shade you applied. So now I'm going over with my RCMA setting powder to properly define the face. So once again, I'm not pressing, I'm just like dabbing the brush on her face, on the places that I highlighted, by the way. So now I'm basically just sweeping off the powder from the face. It's a soft brush also. You do not want to use a hard brush that would remove all your products from the face. So I'm going over with another fluffier brush because it's under the eyes, to properly get the powder in place. So now I'm going over with my powder to contour her nose. And I'm using a powder shade that is darker than her, like a shade darker than her skin tone, to properly define the nose. And it's advisable to start from the bridge of the nose. That's where your eyebrow is. So now I'm contouring properly again, going over with a darker shade, the same shade I used for her nose contour, on the places that I contoured. So to properly bake her face, I'm using this setting powder to apply under the eyes, and I'll also use it for the reverse contour. So now this is the reverse contour that I talked about earlier, and it's just done slightly after where you contoured, and this helps to define your contour actually, and it helps pops out the cheekbone properly. So I'm leaving this setting powder on the face to avoid the eyeshadow falling onto the face. So now for the brows, I'm using my TM Essential Brow Gel. It's the brown shade. I'm applying it on the brows first before drawing. And you don't even need to apply too much. It's just to keep your brows in place before drawing. And of course, I'm using my Beauty Line by Daily pencil for my brows. And when drawing your brows now, in order to get that very perfectly shaped brows that you want, you start from like the tail of the brows first before going forward. You do not start drawing your brows from the very beginning. No, it's just going to give you ugly brows. And don't press on the pencil, you hold it lightly and just fill it in. So you don't necessarily have to like draw one line under and then draw another line on top. So you just gradually fill and slightly paint. So I'm doing the same thing on the other brows. You can see I'm starting from under the brows, not from the bridge. So basically you just start drawing from your brow bone, tail, you get to the bridge, and then you gently paint. Or you gently shade, whichever one you want to call it. So now I'm concealing the brows, and I'm using two shades of concealer. The first one is a lighter one, that's the one that goes under the brow bone to properly define the brows. Then the one that goes forward, that's the bridge area, is her shade, her concealer shade. So you just gently, after you're done concealing the bottom, you just gently bring it down. Let's bring the excess concealer down on the eyelid. So the same thing I did for the first brows, I'll be doing for these other brows also. Starting from the brow bone with a lighter shade, then I would go over with a darker shade, not a darker like her concealer shade. So the first shade should be a shade lighter than her skin tone, then the second shade should be her skin tone shade. So now I'm going over with my Viange eyeshadow primer for my eyeshadow, and I'm using a brush to apply this. You can use your hand, you can use a fluffy brush, whichever one you prefer actually. So I'm just blending to make sure that it goes where I want it to go, that's on the eyelid. And the eyeshadow primer helps your eyeshadow stay on the eyelid. So now I'm adding more setting powder to avoid excess shadows falling on the face. So for my eyeshadow, I'm using my African Queen palette from Blossom. This amazing palette is very pigmented. It does what it's supposed to do and it gives what it's supposed to give. So I'm going over with a neutral color on like over the eyelid with another fluffy brush. Make sure that your blending brushes are soft enough to do what you want them to do, because if you're using a brush that's not soft or is not fluffy enough, it moves your products from the eyes. So now I'm just adding a darker brown on over the eyelid also. So now I'm going over with a lighter shade on the eyelid itself. Now not over it, but on the eyelid. So to properly bring out that color, that's the lighter shade, I went over with the eyeshadow primer as a base again, and then now I'm just dabbing the eyeshadow on it. So basically this trick just makes the eyeshadow pop out more, and that's what it's doing now. As you can see, the color is now more pronounced than before. So I'm just repeating the same thing on the other eyes, dabbing the lighter shade of eyeshadow that I used on the other eyes. So I'm just basically doing the same thing that I did here. So now I'm using another blending brush to blend out the harsh lines, so there will not be a demarcation from where I creased to where my first neutral color was. You guys, the trick to getting a fine makeup is your blending technique. You have to blend properly, from your application of moisturizer down to your primer, down to your moisturizer, down to your foundation, down to your concealer. Basically, you have to blend properly. And another thing is, when you are still in the wet stage, that's the application of foundation, highlighter, that's before applying powder, endeavor that you blended everything properly, because once you start to apply your powdery parts of the makeup, you cannot go back and start blending foundation again. It's just going to ruin the whole process. Like, you would have to start from the beginning. That's wiping your face, and I mean, that's not what you want. So endeavor to blend properly when you're supposed to blend. So now I'm just making sure that my eyeshadow is eyeshadowing. So I'm fixing my lashes now. And I usually make use of bonding glue because it holds firmer than most of the other glues that I've used before. So now for lipstick, oh yeah, I already brushed out the setting powder. So now I'm going over to line the lips. I'm using a brown shade of lipstick to properly line, and I'm using a lip brush. Then I'm creating a nude lips, by the way. So I'm just going over the bottom lip with the same brown lipstick. Then I'll be using a nude in the middle, basically an ombre lips. That's what I'm doing. So, and I would properly apply it with a lip brush also. It just helps the lipstick blend properly. So I'm just adding more because I need it to pop. So now I'm using my brush to check and balance the face before I spray. And of course I'm using my Kiss Beauty. So I'm doing this covering the eyes because I don't want too much water to get on, or too much spray to get on the eyeshadow. So I'm applying the powder blush on her cheek. So your bronzer goes on the cheekbone, not under the cheekbone. It goes on the cheekbone, on your chin, on your nose, and on your forehead. So for a lasting finish, I usually go over with my all-nighter. It just helps the makeup stay longer. So guys, this is the finished look. I hope you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed creating. Don't forget to like this video, don't forget to comment, don't forget to share, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll see you in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.